All right. It is Friday, September 30th, and we are back with another episode of the Heads Up Sports podcast. It is me, Brian, your host. Unfortunately, Ben cannot make it again for this week. Hopefully, he'll be back with us soon. Today, it's a big day. Big day for the New York Mets. On Wednesday, they had a huge game against the Marlins. Um, in that game, looked like we were going to lose, looked like the Braves were going to win. We were both tied in the division, and the Mets found a way to pull it off. Huge win Wednesday, 5-4 against the Marlins. Eduardo Escobar has been heating up in the month of September, and he had all 5 RBIs in the game. He did everything. These are the times, especially late in September, when things are going south, things are getting long, things are dragging out, everyone's preparing for the postseason. This is when you need guys like Eduardo Escobar to step up. I mean, he said in the past, early in the season, he was getting booed, he was struggling, and he said, I hope that one day that the fans will be able to cheer for me instead of boo. And guess what? He was able to do it in the biggest moment of the year. That win against the Marlins, huge win. Going into the series tonight, we play the Braves for 3 games, basically a playoff series. Going into the series due to that win, we are 1 game up. New York Mets are 1 game up. Lots of things could happen in this series, but that gives a little bit more of leeway for this to be a really good special series against the Atlanta Braves. I'm nervous. I can't even lie. I am very nervous for this series. 2 very good teams, 2 very hot teams, and it's really everything's on the line. It is basically a playoff series. Both 2 of the 3 games are going to be televised on national broadcasts, and it's real. We've made it to that point where every game really matters. Every pitch matters, and for both teams, they're taking it seriously. Both of them are starting their best pitchers, and I'll go through all the matchups, and we'll talk about it. All of it. But first, let's talk about the possible outcomes in this series. So for the Mets, if they just win one of these 3 games, they control their own destiny. That's the beauty of winning on Wednesday. If we don't win, it's a lot harder of a road. With just that one win on Wednesday, now it lets us win only 1 game in this series. If the Mets win 1 out of 3 against the Atlanta Braves, they control their own destiny. And because of the tiebreaker, they would have to just win out against the Nationals, sweep the Nationals, and provided the Braves win all their games, if the Mets beat the Nationals every single game, they have the division. Now, if the Mets win 2 out of 3, they only need to win 1 game out of 3 against the Nationals. Winning 2 would be absolutely huge, and it's very possible considering the pitchers that we have going. Now, if they sweep the Braves 3-0, then they clinch right there in Atlanta, which would be wonderful for me to see. But I don't think that's happening. These are 2 teams that are very good, and I can't see that being the case. But for the Braves, the only way that they really take charge and control their own destiny is if they sweep the Mets in these 3 games. I can't see that happening. I can't see it happening for the Mets either, for them sweeping the Braves. But you never know. That's why you got to play them. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot to talk about. Exciting times for both teams. Playoff baseball's here. So, Braves in September, they've been really good. 17-8 in the month. And they're home in this series, which is also huge. They're 52-26 at home this year. That's a very good record. Tough place to come in and play. Throughout the month of September, Michael Harris has been a beast, and he's the guy to look out for in this series for the Braves. In September, he's been batting .327, on-base percentage of .347, and a slugging percentage of .582. This guy is the guy to pitch around in this series. I don't care who else you say is on the team. They have a stacked lineup, but Michael Harris is the guy to watch. The Mets, they haven't been slouches. People have been saying that they've been inconsistent in September, which is true. They've struggled a little bit, which is true. But with all of that, they're still 15-10 in September. We talk about this team in September, saying that that people have been talking as if they've been bad. They still have had a good record, 5 games over 500 for the month. Granted, it wasn't against the best teams, but you're still 15-10. That's hard to do in baseball, and it's hard to, sustain 100-win season type of, rates. Okay, so they've been 15-10 in September, and on the road this year, they've been 47-31. So a 47-31 road team versus a 52-26 home team. Like I said, it's playoff baseball. It's here. It could go either way. Guy to watch out for, like I just said, Eduardo Escobar. He has been hot in the month of September, batting .330, on base percentage of .379, and slugging percentage of .638 in the month of September. He has been on fire. If he keeps this up and brings us into the postseason, man, having him on fire in addition to having Pete Alonso with 40 home runs and 131 RBIs on the season, and Lindor with 100 RBIs, it's a good lineup. It's a very, very good lineup. I can't remember the last time that the Mets had two 100 RBI players on their team, plus another guy as hot as Eduardo Escobar. And speaking of, players for the Mets, huge, huge call up announced last night. Francisco Alvarez, #1 prospect in the major leagues, called up. Darren Ruff has been put on the 10-day IL with a neck sprain. Don't really know how accurate that neck sprain is. He's been struggling. I think that might just be a injury that, I don't know how real of an injury that is for Darren Ruff. I think it's a nice way to say, let's give you some time off and let's get a rookie up here. But wow, it's exciting to have him up. I mean, Mets fans, we've been excited, ready for Francisco Alvarez for the entire year. Catcher has been our biggest weak point of the entire season for the New York Mets in terms of batting. Nito's been great lately. Nito's actually had a pretty solid season. James McCann, he needs to get off the team. That's another story. We still have 2 years of contract with him. But Francisco Alvarez is here. He's going to DH tonight. He's batting 7th. He batted .260 in the minors this year, 27 home runs, 78 RBIs. He is a force behind the plate in terms of batting. His fielding is what needed to be improved according to scouts. And that is why it has taken him a little longer to get called up. He also had a little bit of an injury that he had to deal with a few months ago. But he's here now, and he could provide that last spark. I like that he's batting 7th. I don't want him to bat any higher, put any extra pressure on him. That's not the role that he should have. Anything we get out of him, bonus. If we're relying on a rookie in his first couple games to be the reason we win, it's not going to work out. He doesn't deserve that, first of all. He's been working his entire season, his entire career to get to this point. He does not need the entire world of pressure on his shoulders. Look what happened to Jared Kelenic from the Mariners, previous Met. The guy was, touted as #1 prospect in the majors, Mike Trout-like, all these things. The Mariners right away relied on him, batted him high in the lineup, expected him to be their savior, and he struggled. It's a lot to deal with as a 21-year-old. I don't even think Francisco Alvarez is 21. It's hard to be that young and say, I'm going to be the face of a franchise. I'm going to be the one that takes over everything for this billion-dollar franchise. They got to just focus on, hitting against a major league pitcher. It's hard enough to do that as it is. So I like that they're batting him 7th. I wouldn't bat him any higher. I think he'll have a lot of chances to get some RBIs, get some hits, and get himself comfortable in the major leagues. Now, I'm not sure how this was allowed. I know the rules have been changing a little bit in the majors, but he will be eligible for the playoffs this year, even though he's been called up so late. I'm not going to complain. I think that it's a little odd that he's allowed to, being that he's just called up 6 days before the season ended. But listen, I'll take it any way we could get it. If the rule is there, we follow the rules. So Francisco Alvarez will likely be on this postseason roster as well, and it'll be exciting to see what he could do for us come postseason. It should be a really fun time. These next 3 days, the whole month of October for postseason, it's going to be a really exciting time for Mets baseball. Most excited I've been, since 2015. Man, I'm just every time I, stop for a second and just relax, I just get nervous about this Braves series. This is huge, huge, huge series. Whole season on the line. Game 1 tonight. Jacob deGrom versus Max Fried. Fried has had a few days of extra rest. They purposely skipped him in the rotation so that he would be available for tonight. It's going to be a big, big game tonight. It's going to really set the tone for the series. I think if whoever wins this game is winning 2 out of 3. I really think that. deGrom last start was a little shaky, very shaky actually. It was his worst start, I believe, since 2017. And it's actually bizarre that it was the first time, I believe, in a few years that he gave up more than 3 runs at a start. That shows how dominant he's been. Someone that dominant doesn't just lose it like that. Not Jacob deGrom, at the very least. I can't see him having as bad of a start as he had and not pushing back to be anything less than stellar tonight. I think that Jacob deGrom at most gives up 1 run tonight. I say he gives up 1 run in 6 innings. We just need to see if the Mets, if they could hit Max Fried, also a very, very good pitcher. It's going to be a pitcher's duel tonight. And the whole series is really going to be a pitcher's duel, but we'll see what happens. We need the bullpen to do what they need to do. Starters need to be consistent. It's been a little bit of a struggle in the month of September, but I think what the Mets do best is step up against good teams. And they've stepped up against the Braves throughout the entire year. They just need to do it one last series, and I really think they could do it. We'll see what happens. Game 2, Scherzer on the mound for the Mets, and Wright on the mound for the Braves. Wright is another great pitcher. However, against the Mets this season, he's struggled. He has allowed 9 runs in 13 innings against the Mets this year. Will that continue, or will he go back to his normal? Will Scherzer be dominant, or will he have a shaky game? Maybe he's due for one. We'll see. Third game is Bassitt versus Charlie Morton. Another game that could go either way. Charlie Morton has been inconsistent in September. It's either been completely lights on, completely lights off. So same with Bassitt. I feel like he's had a great month of September, but at any given outing, he could just not have his stuff. So I think Chris Bassitt is the better of those 2 pitchers by far, but it's just a matter of who could do it for this one game, not for an entire season. So it could really go either way. It's going to be a huge series for the Mets, huge series for the Braves. But luckily, because the Mets won on Wednesday, this will be a little bit less stress for the Mets because they do not need to sweep the series like the Braves do. So we'll see what happens. Going to be a big, big series. I keep saying it. Need Edwin Diaz to keep on, dominating like he's been the entire season. It's going to come down to the 9th inning, probably every game. It's playoff baseball. Hopefully, I'll be back next week saying how the Mets won the NL East, and we'll be there. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. Next topic is Thursday night football last night. Dolphins versus the Bengals. Bengals came out on top, 27-15. Now, the game was an exciting game, but I think the game got overshadowed because of what happened with Tua. So for those that didn't watch, I'll start it by talking about last week. So last Sunday, Tua was playing. He hit his head. He got up and started walking a little gingerly, and then eventually he just fell to the floor without, being pushed, tripping, or anything like that. From everyone who saw watching the game on the sideline. Everyone could tell from that he had a concussion. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but somehow this was in the first half. Somehow he gets evaluated and passes neuro evals and is able to come back onto the field for the second half. I have no idea how that happened. But, you know, it's not our call. So he comes back on Sunday and finishes that game. Should have gotten continuous eval on through the entire week. He played last night on Thursday, so he had a short turnaround. Short turnaround after basically collapsing on the field with concussion-like symptoms. And the Dolphins put him back out there on Thursday. And guess what happened? He got sacked, hit his head on the turf, and things got very scary. He hit his head on the turf, and then he started to posture, which is a very clear sign of neurologic injury. And it didn't look pretty. He got carted off, put on a stretcher, and brought to the University of Cincinnati Hospital. Very, very scary on live television. Clear as day for anyone there to see that he had a bad neurologic injury. Now, luckily, he was evaluated at the hospital and he was able to be discharged the same day and was able to fly home with the team. But man, you can't help but think that the Dolphins failed Tua over these past 2 weeks. He has been a star this year, as much as I hate to say it, as much as I've been proved wrong. Haven't really been a Tua supporter. I didn't really think he was that good. His deep ball still leaves something to be desired, but he's been really, really improved this year. He's been a very good football player. He's your franchise quarterback. You're 3-0 going into week 4 against the Bengals. If there's any even thought of him having a concussion, neurologic injury at all before going into this game, why risk it? Why risk it? You're 3-0 already. This is a young quarterback who, I'm sure he was fighting to play, but it is the team's role to figure out what's safest for the player. Now, granted, I'm not there. I'm not evaluating him on a daily basis. I don't know what his symptoms are. I don't know any of that. So this is coming from a blind area. So it's easy to criticize when you don't see what's going on. But from the outside perspective looking in, it does not look good. I believe the NFLPA has already put out a case to potentially sue the NFL and the Dolphins for what has gone on and for letting him play in these past 2 weeks. This could be an ugly future for the Dolphins. Dolphins already have been under a lot of scrutiny this year for tampering with Tom Brady and for a lot of other, shady things like that. So, this does not bode well for the Dolphins culture. This is not something you want to see for your team. Now, luckily for the Dolphins, they are winning right now. They're a 3-1 team, good football team. Wide receivers, by the way, continue to be amazing. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I know we talked about it on the podcast with Ben, and this might have been the one that wasn't able to be released. But we talked about how Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle were both very good wide receivers. We weren't sure how they would work out together. We weren't sure if Tyreek Hill would just take all of Jalen Waddle's touches and that it wouldn't be able to go around with two at the lead. But they've been a really, really good wide receiver core. And, they're a very, very good team. But, with this culture of the Dolphins ownership not really caring about players, doing shady things behind the scenes, it's not a good look. But they still have that winning culture right now, as of right now. I mean, their history isn't the most winning culture. They're in a state that has no state tax, which players love because they can make a lot more money playing in Miami. And they have the location of being in Miami, which is a great location to be in. So luckily for the Dolphins and their ownership, I'm sure they'll be fine. They'll continue to succeed this season and down the road. But Roger Goodell might need to do a little more, step in, because this ownership continues to just be disappointing. Disappointing in terms of how they respect their players and how they respect the league. So we'll see what gets done down the road and what can happen. For in terms of the Bengals this game, it looks like they're back to normal. They had that 0-2 start. People were afraid that, what's going on with the Bengals, but they were able to handle the Jets pretty easily. I don't know if that was more of the Jets being bad and struggling, or if that was the Bengals kind of coming out of their shell. I guess that'll be seen this week for the Jets of what they do. But the Bengals are back to normal. Jamar Chase, amazing. T. Higgins, great game. Joe Burrow, he's been great. They should make the playoffs this year. If they would have lost one of these last two games, that might have been a little iffy, but I think they'll be fine. They're going to make the playoffs with ease. Now, I mentioned the Jets. Rough game against the Bengals last week. We had Quinnen Williams fighting with the defensive line coach. We had Joe Flacco with the worst game, I think, out of any quarterback this entire season. But luckily for the Jets, Zach Wilson is back. I say luckily. Hopefully that remains to be the case. This is a big game for Zach Wilson and the Jets. It's a winnable game for Zach Wilson and the Jets. They're going up against the Steelers. Haven't been great this year. Mitch Trubisky still starting. Mike Tomlin announced that this week that Mitch Trubisky will still be starting. I don't know why. Maybe Kenny Pickett isn't fully ready yet from what they've seen in practice. But if I was Mike Tomlin, I would be starting Kenny Pickett this game, especially going up against the Jets, a younger team with a defense that's been good as a secondary, but still struggling. Jets have not been able to get to the quarterback. Last week against the Bengals were down to their third string left tackle. Still only got, I think, one sack, if even, and barely any pressures throughout the day. It was kind of sad, Carl Lawson is really not the player that he once was a season ago, at least in the preseason. Since tearing his Achilles, he has been a little bit of a shell of himself, but that's expected. Your first season back from an Achilles tear. I think that doesn't mean that his career is over. I think that he's still in that recovery stage and figuring it out. I think as the season goes on, hopefully he will improve and show what he could do and start getting to the quarterback. That's what the Jets need. Their secondary's been great. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed again had a great game last week. They really held down Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase was frustrated with Sauce Gardner, and that's how you know that you have a really good rookie, when he could take one of the best wide receivers in the league and make him upset throughout an entire NFL game because of how well he's locking him down. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, I think, are going to be a great duo for the next couple of years. But anyways, back to Mitch Trubisky. He'll have to face this Jets secondary this week, and he has not been good. Jets haven't been able to get to the O-line. For the Steelers, they haven't had trouble protecting the quarterback. So I think Mitch Trubisky will have plenty of time to throw. But he's had plenty of time to throw the entire season, and he still has not been good. 569 yards through 3 games, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 60.2 completion percentage. The numbers don't say all of it for him. He just really, really hasn't been it. And I think that this will be the game where they finally realize, what are we doing keeping Trubisky in this game? We need to put in Pickett. I think that, especially with this Jets secondary, maybe DJ Reed or Sauce Gardner get their first pick of the season. Well, DJ Reed already had one, but maybe Gardner could get his first pick of the season. Maybe a second one for someone else. and then eventually maybe in the second half, Pickett finally makes his NFL debut. I think that's what happens this week. Jets have been solid against the run this year, other than against the Browns, who have a very talented, duo of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. But I think that the Jets match up very well against the Steelers. The only area of concern is the Steelers pass rush because the Jets O-line has been a little iffy with all the injuries. So as long as they could keep Zach Wilson upright, I think that the Jets can come out on top this game. I really do. Steelers are home. I think the line is -3.5 Steelers. I have the Jets winning outright. In a close one, I think it'll be a lower scoring game, with Trubisky being benched at halftime and Kenny Pickett coming in. That's my bold prediction for the game. I have the Jets winning 21-17 for that game. So we have an exciting night tonight, an exciting weekend. Mets, Braves, all three games are basically playoff games. Here we go. We'll see what happens. I really, really hope that the Mets can find a way to win all three and then, pop champagne in Atlanta. But I don't see that being the case. But we could only hope, and we'll see what happens. I'll talk to you again soon.